The year is 1995. A FedEx delivery truck stops at a woman's garage to collect a package, the package with angel wings stickered on it. After picking up the package, the delivery truck makes its way to a man's location. Upon receiving the package, the man informs the delivery person that it's from his wife, even though he is currently with another woman. We meet our main character, Chuck, who works as a systems analyst for FedEx. His job requires him to travel around the world to resolve productivity problems at FedEx depots. Currently, he is in Russia, working to improve the hub's efficiency. Chuck is in a committed relationship with Kelly Frears, and they live together in Memphis, Tennessee. He calls Kelly to let her know that he'll be returning home in about 18 hours. Chuck returns to the US and meets up with Kelly. They go to the Nolan family Christmas dinner. While at the dinner, Chuck's brother playfully mentions marriage for Chuck and Kelly. They both laugh and avoid answering the question. However, Chuck realizes that he needs to see a dentist because he has a toothache while eating. Suddenly, he checks his pager while Kelly is looking at him. They both look at each other and Kelly knows what's going on. Even though it's Christmas, Chuck has to go to work again. His job comes first. Kelly knows how important it is to him. Kelly, understanding, accepted the situation. She suggested that Chuck come back home before New Year's Eve, and he agreed. At the airport, Kelly gave Chuck a special Christmas present, an old watch, a family heirloom. Chuck is deeply touched by her gift. In return, Chuck gives Kelly a small box. Kelly thinks it might be an engagement ring and is surprised and touched. Chuck explains that they will open it together on New Year's Eve when he comes back. After this heartfelt moment, Chuck gets on his flight, leaving Kelly excited for his return and the opening of the gift. When Chuck returns, he joins 4 flight crew members for the flight to Malaysia. Everything seems normal until they encounter a storm a few hours into the journey. Chuck overhears the pilots discussing their deviation from the original course to avoid the storm, but they are now out of radio coverage. Suddenly, something in the plane explodes, causing chaos as Chuck and the crew are thrown around. One of the pilots gives Chuck a life raft, and he manages to grab it. Chuck watches in horror as the ocean rapidly approaches. With a violent impact, the plane crashes into the Pacific Ocean. After the crash, the plane quickly fills with water, and Chuck begins to drown. He remembers the emergency inflatable life raft given to him by one of the pilots and uses it to stay afloat. As he battles the strong ocean waves, Chuck faces a life or death situation. Thanks to the raft, Chuck miraculously survives and washes ashore on an uninhabited island. Chuck looks around and realizes that he still has his watch with him. He comes across some FedEx packages that have washed up on the shore. Chuck finds himself stranded on an island with no other islands visible as far as he can see. Determined to be rescued, he gathers some driftwood and arranges them in a giant help sign on the beach, hoping to attract passing planes. And his first day on that island ends. The next day, Chuck finds more packages and discovers a source of water and coconuts on the island, with which he quenches his thirst. He explores the island, finds a cave, and climbs to its highest point for a better view. From there, he spots something in the water below. Rushing down, he discovers the body of one of the crew members who had tried to save him. After searching the crew member's pocket, Chuck found a small flashlight. Chuck then decided to give the crew member a proper resting place and dug a grave for him. He laid the crew member to rest, honoring the person who had tried to save him. On his 3rd day on the island, he makes several ways to hunt. The night creeps in and he takes out a picture of Kelly from the watch she had given him and finds comfort in the memory of her. As he looks out into the distance, he spots a ship on the horizon. Desperate for rescue, Chuck calls out and flashes a small flashlight, but the ship is too far away to notice. In a hurry, Chuck hastily packed his belongings and set off on the damaged raft. However, the tides were too strong and they threw him off the raft into the water, cutting his leg on a coral reef. In excruciating pain, he arrives back on the island as heavy rain begins to pour down. He seeks shelter in the cave he had discovered earlier. Inside, he finds a small stream and drinks from it before exhaustion overcomes him. Completely exhausted, he falls into a deep slumber, and the small torch he had lit flickers out. The following day, Chuck excitedly unpacks the parcels that had washed ashore, hoping to find anything that might aid his survival. Among the items, he discovers a volleyball, cassette reels, a pair of ice skates, and a dress. With each package opened, except for one adorned with angel wings, Chuck finds a renewed sense of determination. keeping the unopened package as a symbol of hope, a promise to deliver it to its rightful owner. Chuck makes do with the tools he has, using the skating boots to crack open coconuts and the dress to catch little fish. As the day wears on, Chuck attempts to construct a shelter and kindle a fire, but his efforts yield no success, resulting only in frustration and a painful cut on his hand. In a moment of hopelessness, he unleashes his anger by throwing things around and shouting into the void. Amidst the chaos, Chuck notices his blood-stained handprint on the volleyball. Inspired by a newfound companion, he draws a face on the ball and places it by his side, creating the illusion of companionship. With the volleyball by his side, Chuck keeps going, finally succeeding in igniting a fire after trying several times. Overjoyed by his success, Chuck dances around the flames, feeling a glimmer of hope in his otherwise hopeless situation. He celebrates by cooking a crab over the fire and enjoys a delicious meal while conversing with his newfound friend, whom he affectionately names Wilson after the manufacturer's label on the volleyball. The next day while hunting, Chuck's tooth starts hurting again. He extracts it using the skating boot and rock to free himself of the pain, and the pain causes him to lose consciousness. After 4 years of being the only human on the island, Chuck has become a skilled hunter and adapted to his solitary life. His appearance had changed. His hair and beard had grown longer, showing that time had passed. Despite the challenges, he even made his cave more comfortable by decorating it with painted faces and constructing a solar calendar to track the passing days. One day, something exciting happened. Chuck found a big piece of plastic that had washed ashore. He had an idea and decided to make a sail out of it. This was a big moment in his plan to escape the island. So he started building a raft with the wood he gathered by chopping down coconut trees. He planned his escape carefully, keeping track of the wind and tides to ensure he had the best chance to leave the island. He even made rope from tree bark and cassette reels. Chuck is almost done building his raft, but he realizes that he needs more rope where he had previously set up a dummy to test out suicide. However, getting more rope means he has to climb up a high cliff, which isn't ideal. He chats with Wilson, telling him there's a way to get more rope, but he doesn't want to do it. He argues with Wilson and eventually agrees, and after some thought, he decides to take the risk and climb. Back at the cave, he talks to Wilson and reveals that the reason for the tree dummy was because he was testing out suicide. He explains to Wilson that he didn't want to spend the rest of his life feeling hopeless while talking to a volleyball. In a moment of frustration, Chuck throws Wilson into the surf, but soon realizes he made a mistake and regrets his actions. He knows that Wilson is the only companion he has on the island and goes on a search and finds him, apologizing and acknowledging the importance of Wilson in his life. Finally, Chuck prepares to leave the island, leaving behind a message on a rock as a memory of his survival and his emotional farewell to Kelly with Wilson by his side. Chuck launches his raft, facing giant and strong waves. However, finding food and water becomes a tough challenge for Chuck, who has to rely on fish and rainwater to survive. As he sails, Chuck encounters violent storms that severely damage his raft. Desperate and weakened, he wakes up to find his friend, Wilson, missing. Frantically, he swims after his friend, but the distance proves too great. With a heavy heart, Chuck lets Wilson go, choosing to cling to the raft for his survival. Now Chuck is in a really bad condition. He is very sick and unable to move at all. Chuck is awakened by the sound of a passing ship and is rescued, ending his long isolation. Back in the US, Kelly receives a phone call and faints from the news. 4 weeks later, Chuck was able to fly back home, which was arranged by FedEx. On the flight, he experiences simple comforts that had been absent on the island, like soda, ice, and comfortable clothing. Upon his arrival, Chuck expects to be reunited with Kelly, but he finds out that a funeral was held for him, and Kelly has moved on in her life. She is now married and has a child. Although many people are waiting for him at the airport, Chuck feels very lonely and sad. Jerry, Kelly's husband, tells Chuck that Kelly is not ready to face him yet because she is feeling overwhelmed. Jerry is seen comforting a crying Kelly as they leave the airport terminal. Meanwhile, Chuck is standing at a distance and watching them, feeling heartbroken that the love of his life has moved on without him. It's tough for him to accept that his life will never be the same again. Chuck had a great time celebrating with his colleagues from FedEx when he returned to his room. surrounded by a feast of food left behind by his friends. Among the items, he notices a small lighter on the table, a symbol of survival. Now, he doesn't need it anymore. That night, Chuck decides to visit Kelly's house, longing to reconnect with her. The reunion is emotional as they catch up on all the memories they've missed out on. Chuck learns that Kelly never gave up hope of finding him, searching tirelessly until the day he was rescued. Filled with emotions, Chuck returns the watch that Kelly had given him, and Kelly is shocked to see that he still had it. Moved by Chuck's gesture, Kelly takes him to the garage where their shared car is parked, a symbol of their past life together. As Chuck is ready to leave, Kelly hands him the keys to the vehicle. As Chuck drives away, Kelly realizes that she has more to say and runs towards him while calling his name. Chuck also stops his car, and they both kiss with all their heart. Kelly expresses her love for Chuck, despite the 4 years of his absence and the changes in their lives. Chuck also loves Kelly and feels the same way, but he understands that too much has changed for them to be together. Kelly has a family now, and she can't leave them behind. So, they both agree sadly to part ways. At the story's end, Chuck journeys to deliver the unopened packages he found on the island. He doesn't find anyone at the house where he stops, but he leaves a package with a heartfelt note at the door. While driving back, Chuck stops to check the map and figure out where to go. Suddenly, a woman stops her car and offers to help him. Chuck asks about the road ahead. The woman answers his question, and as she drives away, he notices the angel wings on the back of her truck, which remind him of the package he left unopened. Chuck realizes that the package, which gave him hope and inspiration to survive, belonged to the woman he just met. This happy coincidence leaves Chuck smiling and hopeful for a new beginning. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for more videos like this. We've got a lot of great content coming your way. Take care and see you again.